This is Hard Parking, sponsored by Right Honda and Right Toyota out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Man, boy, I'm tired. I'm back in my home studio, Gilbert, Arizona. Today is Sunday, November the 3rd. The time changed for everybody last night except for us. Just got back from Dallas yesterday. It was a long drive, and I'll tell you all about the trip, some of my observations, some of the food, some of the crazy stuff that happened to me. My journey began with a streeter. My journey ended with a streeter. In both cases, I feel like my life was saved by a streeter. Find out what all that means after this word from 4 Wheel Online. For over a decade, 4 Wheel Online has been bringing the best truck accessories and truck parts to enhance the appearance and performance of all trucks and SUVs. They are dedicated to providing an extensive range of upgrades that will match any maker model on the road. The truck products cover everything to give your truck a custom look and added functionality. Need a wheel and tire package? Head over and use the configuration tool. They carry all the major brands of wheels and tires, so go get outfitted today. Visit them online at 4Wheel Online. So you guys heard last week, hopefully you listened to the episode last week with Acura VIP guest Jonathan Rivers, who also has the Drive Culture on YouTube. So that was unexpected. That interview, so the reason why I decided to bring my microphones because 2 weeks ago I said I didn't know if I was going to bring my microphones. I decided to bring my microphones because I had called John Vassos, dear friend of the show, dear friend of mine, and I asked him, I said, John, if I bring my microphones, do you think we could find time to sit down and have a conversation while we're both together in Dallas? So part of that was, man, that would be neat. And then you just never know when you're going to see him again. You know, as a recap, we're living on borrowed time. He's living on borrowed time, not we. In 2020, he was told he had less than 12 months to live. He has mesothelioma. And here we are in November of 2024. So every time I talk to him, every time we get to see him at an event, it's just a blessing. And we know he's playing with house money. Those watching over us is playing with house money with him. And so you just never know. If you think this is going to be about cars, you should know this podcast. We talk about cars a little bit, but it's more about the people, the relationships, and the things that connect us in life, the things that we all have in common, the camaraderie, the food, if you like to drink, like I do, the drinking, pretty much everything else in life. So we'll just kind of step through it. Tuesday, October 22nd, myself and a crew from Arizona set off to go to Dallas, Texas, Grapevine, Texas, in drive. Now, any other time, given that distance, I would have flown. Number one, I don't get PTO. You don't get that time back. Driving is always more fun on the way there than on the way back. That's my opinion. Because when you go with a group of people, we have our radios, our little Baofeng radios, and we're talking and, hey, where do you guys want to eat? Who needs gas? Who needs to stop? And it's just this really fun team effort. Plus, it's really cool. It just feels good to roll with other cars that are basically the same car as yours. And it's actually a visual treat for other people on the road. I mean, how cool is that? Okay, not everybody likes a Cybertruck. But if you are out on the road, cruising down the highway, you're bored. Maybe you're driving the family minivan. Your spouse is sleeping or just whatever deep in social media or just not paying attention to you or telling you something you don't care about. The kids are screaming in the back. And you just want to have something cool happen when you're driving, and all of a sudden 10 Cybertrucks go past you, different colors, some the same. That would be cool. It'd be cool to see. 10 Volkswagen Beetles, 10 NSXs. So it's always cool. It's always fun. But that morning I woke up and my back was killing me. Now we'll go back, no pun intended, the week and a half before. I'm sitting on the sofa downstairs and Nova, my granddaughter, totally obsessed with me. Not quite 2 years old yet. She'll be 2 in December. She starts jumping all over me and flopping. And you know, the little kids, they don't actually pay attention to their surroundings. Why would they? And so as an adult, if you have any self-awareness and awareness of the environment around you while you're watching TV, you're thinking about those things. So as she's flopping down, I'm throwing my arm out, throwing my hand out, preventing her from hitting her head on the sofa or falling off the couch or hitting her head on the remote or something, anything crazy. So she's doing this 5-10 minutes. I'm just catching her, whatnot. And I'm old. I have a weirdly bad back. Now there's people out there that obviously have worse backs than me. I've never had back surgery or any of that stuff, but it doesn't seem to take a lot lately for me to pull my back or twist my back. I go to the chiropractor, try to go once or twice a month. I go have therapy massages on my back, not just your normal feel-good vacation massages, but like the deep therapy massages. And so I try to keep an eye on that. So from that, my back was tweaked for about a week. Just before the trip, the weekend before, I think it was the Friday before this trip, I went and had my massage, and then I went after that and went to the chiropractor, and they got it sorted out. My back was crooked like it always is, and he said, yeah, it's going to be sore for a couple days, but then you'll be good. I said, all right, bet. So I'm sitting here at my desk during the work day, and I twisted, because you know how you sit there and you feel like you have to twist to crack your back, and it always feels good. I did that, and it didn't hurt, but that's the last thing I remember actually doing that could have caused damage to my back. So now fast forward through the weekend, and now it's Tuesday morning, and I wake up, and I can barely even walk. It's the type of pain where it hurts to stand up, and it also hurts to bend over. Like if you lean against the kitchen counter or something, and it still hurts, like you just can't get comfortable. And so I know that I have to go to Walgreens, so I'm already late to the rendezvous. I have to go to Walgreens really quick, go in there and buy ibuprofens, and buy Icy Hot or something that I can just rub on there like an Icy Hot, not a patch, but one of those little roller ball thingies. And, you know, I probably should have got a lidocaine patch. I didn't, but I was already late. So we're running late. So that sets the table for this trip. Okay. So we go to the meetup spot, and we have eventually, because we meet up here in Phoenix, then we go down and pick up the other 2 cars down in Tucson. And eventually, as we get on the road, there's 7 NSXs. There's 6 on the road. There's 1 on a trailer. And every time we stop, it's hard. It's really hard for me to get out of the car. It's hard for me to get in the car. Like it was just straight pain. Like it really hurt. And everybody's like, damn, dude, what's wrong with your back? So finally we get the first gas stop, and I think it was in New Mexico. I get out of the car. I could barely get out of the car. I'm telling you, I'm not a hyperbole guy. When I say I could barely get out, and it freaking hurt bad. But, you know, you pump the gas and whatnot. So my buddy Matt Streeter looks at me and says, what's going on with your back? I go, man, my back is jacked. And Matt's like, oh, damn. Well, I got some medicine for you. Because Matt has had issues with his back, and he's had a lot of surgeries. And, you know, he's one of those guys where if he's concerned, you know, he's really concerned, and he actually has solutions. And his wife, Carrie, is a nurse, and she was with us. So she hooked me up. You know, she put a big lidocaine patch, like prescription strength. She's like, lift up your shirt and put your pants down a little bit. I've seen this before. I'm a nurse. I'm like, all right, cool. I don't care. Right. Puts that patch on. Doesn't really feel like it's really helping, but it's slowly helping. And then we kind of continue on with our day. And this is how bad it hurts. It hurts when you're sitting in your car and you feel like your kidney area just pulsate. So think about that. If you've ever had a bad back, you know what I'm talking about. It just pulsates. Every time your heart beats and pumps that blood through there, it's just like getting someone just slowly punching you in your lower back on the side. And you just have to wait for that pain to go away. You just have to, there's nothing you can do. So it hurt to drive. It would have hurt for me to ride in the passenger seat. So that was my trip. So that first day, it was like that all day. So what I want to talk about beyond that is some road observations. I didn't have a lot of them because I was in so much pain. But we decided that we were going to go eat in El Paso. So we picked Dave's Hot Chicken. One of the guys, Jhae. So let me set the table for you on all the people with us. We had Jhae, me. We had another Jhae. We had another Jhae and his son London. We had another Jhae who goes by Juicy Jhae. He's in college. His name's Joe. Then we had another Jhae named John. Then we had a Dre, Matt, and Carrie. So we had Jhae, London, Dre, Matt, and Carrie. Pretty crazy group. All NSXs. So we decided to go to Dave's Hot Chicken in El Paso. GPS is really good about routing us around all the traffic, because that's the thing. We're like, okay, it's a Tuesday. We can either eat outside of Tucson or we can just book it to El Paso, try to get to the other side of El Paso, and then eat, and then get on the highway and go. So it rerouted us around the busiest parts of El Paso, downtown El Paso. And the reason I'm telling you this is because the route it took us, we were south of the 10. So if you guys understand, the 10 goes east, basically East Coast all the way to the West Coast. It's the southernmost interstate or freeway, whatever the blue sign with the red writing is, the one that goes from state to state. It's the southernmost one of those in the United States. There are times when you're in Mexico. So for example, when we drive, well, I guess Highway 8 is even lower, but I don't think 8 goes all the way across. So when we drive here to San Diego, we take the 8. When we drive from here to Los Angeles, we take the 10. So here to San Diego on the 8, you get so low for like a split second, I think you're in Mexico, and you see the border patrol. You don't see regular police. You have to go through a security checkpoint. Most of the time it's on. It's not always on. You can see the border wall as you're driving east to west on the left, and it's not right up on the road, but it's a little further out. Going back to the story, we're driving through El Paso, and it routes us south of the 10, and we are right next to the wall. This wall is huge. This wall had to be, I haven't Googled it, this wall had to be no shorter than 50 feet, maybe taller than 50 feet, maybe 70 feet. Razor wire everywhere. You guys see that video of Kamala Harris when she went to the wall and she had all the razor wire for the photo op, depending on how you guys believe your political beliefs, but she went to the wall and you saw all that razor wire, because I remember seeing that and thinking, I've never seen razor wire at the wall. There's 500 something miles of the wall. I obviously haven't been across the entire length, left to right, east to west of the wall, but we don't have that in Arizona. Not that I've seen. Maybe we do it at a different part of Arizona. In fact, I think she was in Arizona, but not on the path from here to San Diego through Yuma. We don't have all that. But back to El Paso, on the right side, you could see the Rio Grande River, and there was razor wire on the other side. There were Humvees. Like, that was secure. I've never seen it. That was impressive. Regardless of what you think about immigration, illegal immigration versus legal immigration, the border wall, regardless of what you think, I'd never seen that before. We all made the same observation. We all said, holy crap, that was big. And I said, if you're dumb enough to illegally cross the border in El Paso, you deserve to get caught and sent back. Because if you go 40 miles east or 40 miles west, it's probably no wall at all. Definitely no razor wire. And you could probably just walk over or climb up and then go down the other side. Like, it's that. There's sections where there's nothing. But that was impressive. And I thought I just wanted to bring that up. So we went to Dave's Hot Chicken. I've never gone to Dave's Hot Chicken before. We have one here in Phoenix, here in Gilbert. And man, that was really good. It's worth it. So this is an advertisement for Dave's Hot Chicken. If you've never been, go. At different levels of spice. The fries were good. The chicken sliders are good. The chicken fingers are good. Or what, chicken strips, I guess. Not chicken fingers. Does anyone call them chicken fingers anymore? I think when I was a little kid, we called them chicken fingers or steak strips or something. Chicken fried steak fingers. That's what we had in Texas. So anyway, we stayed in Odessa that night. Uneventful. Highway 10 is uneventful, first off, unless you're staring at the border wall. Next day, we pack up in Odessa, Texas, and we drive and we go to G2 Motorsports Park. And this was Wednesday, which is technically the first day of the 2 track days. So you have Wednesday and Thursday are the track days. Then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are the social. So there's people who register for the track that almost always there's a few people who register for the track that don't register for the social. But there's the people that register for the social, it's like maybe 90% of the people do the social and only 10% of the people do the track. That's how different it is. So there's 2 different registrations, although it's one event. That makes sense. So we get to the track, G2 Motorsports Park, beautiful track in Texas, like really beautiful. I get to meet Lexi, which runs their day-to-day. Super awesome. Shout out to Lexi. You're never going to hear this probably, but the track is owned by a guy named Lou Gigliotto. And I think he was or somehow related to Lou Gelati Racing. I think that's correct. But yeah, Lou Gigliotto, and Peter Cunningham knows him. Shocker, right? So Peter brought him out and introduced him to everybody. Hey guys, this is the owner of the track. He got a big old ovation because it was a beautiful track. And that's what's cool about knowing Peter is he knows all these people because he's been in motorsports for 50, 60 years, it feels like. Maybe not that long. Maybe 40, 50 years. It's been a long time. I think Peter started racing in the late 70s. Maybe the early 70s. If he hears this, he will correct me. Pedro, so you will correct me. But that kicked off our NSXPO weekend. It's a thing when cars start pulling in and the parking lot starts filling up, and it's got this big sign that says, reserve parking, reserve parking for NSXPO 2024, Grapevine, Texas. And it was guarded. You had to cost us almost $600 a night to have an off-duty police officer just sit there all night and make sure nobody was going into the parking lot, because it was our hotel conference center, the Hilton DFW Lakes, and it's right by the Grapevine Mills Mall, which is this shopping mall, kind of not really outlet mall, but it's this really big shopping mall, and there's a bunch of hotels over there. So a lot of the parking lots get shared by other hotels, but we had that parking lot was our exclusive parking lot. Thursday morning, we go out to the track. We called them, so the Japanese crew came in. We had executives from Acura come in, and some unexpected at the, up until registration, we noticed looking at the list of attendees that we had Honda Corporate was coming. We're like, holy crap, Honda Corporate's coming. So the more Honda Corporate people registered, the more Acura Corporate people registered. So then it kind of became this little side mission from the main NSXPO. Because as club president, I don't run the day-to-day necessarily of NSXPO. That's why we have an NSXPO representative on the club level. And then we have the local group head out. This year was Terry Brown and his group. In Phoenix here in 2022, I was part of the planning committee. So Terry was the planning committee, and awesome job they did. But we had kind of a side mission as the board of the NSX Club of America, so NSXPO is the main event every year for the NSX Club of America. But as I was just saying, we kind of have a local group run that with us assisting them every way we can. But this was less them worried about Acura and Honda, and it was more the NSX CA board trying to figure that out. But one of the guys was Hideki Kakunuma, and he is the chief designer and test driver for the Honda Civic Type R, the FL5 Type R. Not to be confused with the anime writer. There's a guy who does cartoons or anime back in the day. Coincidentally, was a Robotech writer. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, then you have to dig in my history, because when my car was wrapped, it was the Macross Robotech wrapped NSX. So that's something that influenced me when I was a really small kid. So I did some research on Hideki Kakunuma. I was like, oh, that's not the Hideki I met. Oh, it's a different Hideki, but this one was related to Robotech. So it's super crazy. But he and his crew came out. There was 5 of them. And all weekend we nicknamed them the J Crew, which is kind of funny. So Thursday morning, I took one of the J Crew with me in my car, and we just had a fun conversation. No details provided, but we just kind of had a fun conversation, took some notes, asked me about my car, my old car. And that was essentially the first day of the social portion. What's cool about that is Acura showed up. Well, we knew they were coming, but they don't always bring like a bunch of cars, but they brought a retired GT3 race car, like legit. They brought the Shaki's Journey Anime NSX. They brought an Integra Type S that's all painted up anime as well, that they used at Long Beach, the event that I went to back in April. And they put them on the track. And we all drove our cars on the track. It's called a parade lap, where you can't go over a certain amount, like a certain speed. But at least you have your car on the track. Well, that was a lot of fun. Took a big group photo, went back to the hotel, and that's when the partying began. NSXPO, a lot of drinking. Always a lot of drinking. Again, it's always about your relationships. And we talked about that last year. Sometimes I have a guest that had attended. I think last year it was Fred Plan. You guys remember Fred Plan? We talked about it. Year before that, it was my friend Jason, J-Lo. This year, I'm not doing an official recap with anybody else. It's just me. But the message is the same. We get there, we park our cars, and then you get to meet the people that maybe you've had contact with on social media for years. Maybe you've seen them or seen their car. Maybe you've never heard of them before. Because every year there's about, I would say 50 or 60% first timers. And it's not because of attrition. It's because the NSXPO moves to different parts of the country. Next year, it's going to be in the Seattle area, Tacoma, SeaTac. And so the expectation is we're going to have a lot of people representing from Washington, Portland, Utah, California, the surrounding area. And that's where a lot of the new people are attending for the first time because it's in their backyard. So why would you not attend? So we have a full weekend of events. That's how NSXPO is, the social portion. And so you have like I said earlier, you have the 2-track, but then Thursday night, sometimes there's just a social. We went to a place called Sneaky Pete's, and that was kind of the welcome. Everyone got food, and we were able to hang out and drinks. No official announcements, really. And then late night at the hotel, at the main hotel bar. And first off, so this was Thursday night, and they did last call, I think at 10, maybe even 9:30. It was really early. Now, if I'm the bar manager, because I've worked at a club bar before, and it's not too late, it's kind of up to you. Because there's a certain time of the night where you're not allowed to sell alcohol. It's usually a state thing. And when you look up and the entire bar is just packed full of people, you might want to stay open a little bit longer if you can. I mean, if they legally have to shut down at a certain time, then they have to shut down at a certain time. But that party always spills out into the hallway anyway. There's always people who bring their own liquor. I won't say who they are, but some good friends of mine were walking around with handles of like Weller SR and pouring it into coffee cups, and everyone's just out there drinking. Some people are up drinking in their rooms, like, hey, come meet us in room whatever, and you go up there and have a drink. And that's basically what the whole weekend was all about. Friday morning, we get up early. We do our little thing in the parking lot. It's a welcome breakfast, and we're going to go to the Fort Worth Stockyard. So everybody got in their car, and you had 120 or so cars all drive to the stockyards in Fort Worth, which is awesome. If you've never been there, it's really hard to describe, but if you really want to encompass what you would think stereotypical Texas would be like, you want to go to the stockyards because it's like this really cool, a few blocks, for 5 or 6 blocks worth of like westernized area. You have the bricks are on all the roads. It's functioning roads, so there's cars there too. Then they shut it off and they do this big old show where the cowboy comes out and talks for half an hour, and they walk all the Texas Longhorns down the road. And it's this really big thing, and it kind of kicks off the day. So that was super cool. Then what do? You just branch off with whoever you know, go find something to eat, go find something to drink. That was the event. Now, there was a drive after that. We didn't do the drive. I had some stuff I had to do back at the hotel with some of the rest of the board. And, well, Yvette and I, because Yvette flew on Wednesday, she and I and one of the Jhaes and his wife and Dre and his wife and Jhae in London. So half of our crew that drove over, we all went out and had barbecue. Really, really cool place called Something Great or Something 8. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think Something 8, EIGHT. The Great 8, 8 Great. Anyway, it's in Grapevine. It's really good. Really good. And they had a special on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday beef ribs. And it's the proper beef ribs with a big old chunk of meat on there. Kind of like Captain Caveman, I think was his name, would always eat on the Hanna-Barbera cartoons. That traditional dinosaur-looking chunk of meat with just that weird bone right through the middle of it. We had that. Then Friday night, the next event was these tour buses, or these really not tour buses, these nice buses showed up, and charter buses. We all loaded in them, took like 5 or 6 buses to fill up everybody, and took us down to downtown Grapevine. Went to a food hall. Game 1 of the World Series was on, and it's just the same deal. Now, you guys are hearing a theme here, right? Since we left the track, how much have you heard about the cars other than doing a cruise? So, social, saying hi to everybody, taking a bunch of pictures, getting drinks. And it was cool because we had drink coupons, or we had food coupons, basically. Everybody was given $40 to spend it on whatever you want in downtown Grapevine at the food hall, whatnot. So I bought a Clase Azul Reposado for $15. And it was $15 because it was really $55, which is on the higher end. but they took the $40 off, so I only had to pay $15 out of pocket. So while I would never have paid that much for a normal one, the fact that I had a $40 discount sitting in my hand, I could justify, okay, well, I'll just pay $15 for it. And I'll just joke with everybody all night that I paid $15 for it. So when that was over, we went back to the bar at the hotel. And this time it stayed open a little later. And those drinks at that bar were cheap. They were cheap. Like, more on that later, but they were cheap. Next morning I wake up, Saturday, and we had an event at Grubbs Acura. And Grubbs Acura was a major sponsor. They came, like, we had great sponsors this year. I can't remember having better sponsors than we had this year between Grubbs Acura and Citrus Systems and Endless Wraps, Ceramic Pro of Carrollton. Acura Corporate kicked in more than they usually do this year. So we did that at Grubbs. But before that, I went down and had breakfast in the restaurant called the Vineyards. And this was crazy. So it's a hotel. We're not talking Residence Inn. So like I said, it's a Hilton DFW Lakes Conference Center. The breakfast buffet was $14. Now, I don't know if you travel a lot, but when you go to a restaurant or at a hotel that actually has a menu, actually has a buffet, a decent hotel at least, it's going to cost $24, $29, sometimes as much as $35 just for a breakfast buffet. And it's not that the buffet is special. You have your scrambled eggs, your sausage, your bacon, your pancakes, maybe a waffle, maybe biscuits, an omelet station. You know, and this had all of that, but it was $14. But it had the good bacon. You know, it's not the kind when you go to Fairfield Inn or, like I said, Residence Inn, when you get the bacon, it looks like they took a normal piece of bacon and they stuck it on a lathe and sliced it like 10 ways. This was that thick bacon. And some people don't like the thick bacon, but I love the thick bacon. And it's the kind that has a chew to it. So you have to kind of dig it out of your teeth. You're like playing with it the rest of the morning because you didn't bring floss. That bacon. And then the biscuits were super soft. Now, I told somebody about the biscuits. They go, well, did they have a hard outside and a soft middle? Or were they just soft all around? I said they were just soft all around. But I'll take soft all around buttermilk biscuits any day over a hard outside, soft middle. And then you put the gravy on it. And it was the best. So shout out to DFW Lake Conference Center, Hilton, and Grapevine for having a damn good breakfast for $14. But again, after that, we went to Grubbs Acura, and then we're supposed to go from Grubbs Acura, which was a public event. One of my besties, Tony, showed up and hung out with me. I was also able to see my friend Dan from Make-A-Wish, here's the story on Dan Heinrich, and this is why I went with Make-A-Wish, and more on Make-A-Wish in a little bit. So coming into this year, I wanted to start the NSX Cares charity campaign. So that's what we did. Because back in 2022, because of my affiliation with Right Honda, Right Toyota, and Jhae D'Amelio, who is one of the most philanthropic people I'm ever going to meet, because you guys know we do this thing with One Less here, One Auto and Rad or Die events, and we feed people, United Food Bank of Arizona. So we're always doing charity stuff. And so I said in 2022, hey, why don't we throw charity into NSXPO? So we did it in 22. We raised more money last year in Georgia. And then this year I said, well, why don't we start early in the year as a team, as an organization, give everybody an opportunity to donate, because you get a donation receipt, and let's start the NSX Cares campaign. And not everybody was excited about it. That's okay. You don't have to donate, but there's people who want to donate. There's people who want to make a difference. You can make a difference your own way, and that's fine. So if you do something with your local Children's Dream Network or whatever, fine, cool. Just do something. But this is from the club. So we linked up with Make-A-Wish of North Texas. The volunteer chair of the Fort Worth is my dearest friend, one of my dearest friends, Dan Heinrich. So Dan, and I've told you guys before, a long time ago, I was adopted. I was adopted when I was 4, maybe 5. I think I was 4 years old. Dan was the first kid I met once I got adopted. So an argument could be made that he is my oldest existing friend. And we're both 48. So we've known each other for 44 years. And we don't talk a lot, but our families live near each other in Georgia, and our families lived an hour away from each other in Texas. So we grew up together. They moved to Texas, and we moved out there a year later. But I saw him quite a bit growing up. But again, there's times we go because we're both adults, right? So sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't talk. But this was my first time seeing him since I was in Texas 5 years ago working at Cook Children's Hospital as a consultant, which is my normal day job. And he came out to the Grubs event with Make-A-Wish. And so we set the goal of $30,000 this year. And going into that weekend, we only had like $7,000. And they told me that it doesn't matter. They're still going to grant the wish and we just pay them what we can. But personally, I felt that we could have done better. And this is up to Grubs. So this story is not over by any means. But this was up to Grubs. Our keynote speaker, Takuma Sato, had just landed from an overnight flight or a red-eye flight. And so we waited at Grubs for him. Now, this guy is a Formula F1 driver or former F1 driver and Indy winner. So he's won an F1 race. He's won Indianapolis 500, I think 2-time maybe. But that was a pretty big deal. So he showed up, took some photos with us, and then we went and did our group photo, and then went back to the hotel. This was Saturday and got ready for the main banquet. The main banquet is a big deal. That's when we do our wish reveal. That's when we do the live auction. Everybody's excited for it. You know, smart casual is the suggested dress code. I usually get a little G'd up. So I had me a nice suit on with a clean white t-shirt that Yvette bought for me that day. Had some clean white shoes on. You know, looking pretty good. But I'll tell you guys, as much as I talk on this podcast, I'm in my space here. I think I've said this before. I am very comfortable in my space here where I'm talking to you guys right now. And I've gone up on stage. Last year I was on stage for NSXPO. 2021 I was on stage. 2022 I was on stage. And I guess for me, this being my first year as club president and it being in my hometown of DFW, I just wanted to make sure everything was perfect. I didn't get the presentation as far in advance as I wanted, to make sure I didn't get up on stage and do something stupid. We made it work. The killer committee, we made it work. But I saw the slideshow for the first time after we'd let everybody in the doors. So, but we still made it work. But man, I don't know. I felt a little nervous. Like I couldn't eat my food. I wasn't hungry. I had a beer. Dan bought me a Beefeater gin just to kind of loosen me up. But I got up on stage. Apparently I did a pretty good job kind of telling my NSX story, making people laugh, helping welcome them to the main event. And we had 320 something people in attendance, which is, I think, the most attended NSXPO ever. Now, this you have to think about this for you non-car people. There's not a lot of NSXs. This isn't one of those things like a Corvette club or a Porsche club where there's thousands of members and thousands of people attend. Usually our NSXPOs are 240, 50 to 280 people, and that includes members, plus ones, sponsors, volunteers, sponsor staff. But we were over 300. So there was a lot of people there. So Takuma Sato came up there as keynote. You know, I went up there and ran the live auction. We had a Make-A-Wish child and his mother were up there, and they had a wish recently granted, so they kind of told their story. And through the auction, remember I told you earlier I was a little disappointed because by the time the actual banquet started, I think we're at 8,000 something. But by the time it ended, by the time NSXPO was over, we raised $38,000. So we're at 127% of our goal of 30,000, which is super awesome. And that essentially was NSXPO. Let me tell you about the guests. Acura was there, my great friend Kelly, who she's done so much for us. Jonathan Rivers, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, he's way up in Acura. And check out our episode that we did last week. Mark Deutsch. Mark was in charge of Type S allocations. So I can't even imagine, NSX Type S allocations. So I can't even imagine his email and phone calls the whole time. Rob Keogh is a product planning. And then Quincy also came out. And these are all people from Torrance. So after the banquet, everybody went back to the bar, and I was like, okay, I was talking to Jonathan Rivers about it all weekend about maybe doing the podcast. So again, when you guys heard that wasn't really planned, but he's like, hey, we can do it. And I go, okay, yeah, let's do it. So I went to the bar and ordered 2 Eagle Rares. And here's the thing. They poured this thing so heavy. And I think those Eagle Rares may have been $15, $16 a piece, which isn't anything, right? For a heavy pour. We're not talking a 1 or 2 ounce pour. They just poured them up. It's like a 3 or 4 ounce pour. A lot of Eagle Rare this last weekend. So I took them up to the office. We call it the war room, like a private conference room where you have all the swag and the committee doles out all their stuff and gets all organized. And I was waiting for Jonathan Rivers because he had to run to Grubbs Acura to help return some cars. I'm setting up and I got my podcast mic set up, my little recorder set up. I'm sitting there and worried about the static from the air conditioner in the background. And I'm drinking, my Eagle Rare, and his is sitting in front of me. And then Terry comes in, and Terry was working like nobody's business all weekend. He and his staff, again, they pulled off an amazing event. But he set this box down because they just got done clearing out the banquet hall, and he just crashed on the floor. He just kind of, it's almost like you see those videos or those video games where someone gets punched really hard and they hit the wall and they just kind of slide down the wall. He just kind of slid down the wall, and I looked at him. I was like, God, dude, you are beat. And I just handed him my Eagle Rare, and he just took a drink of it. And he goes, oh, I needed this so much. And I was like, oh, all right, man, I got you. Let me get you. So I went and grabbed Jonathan Rivers' Eagle Rare, and I gave it to Terry. And I go, that's okay. I'm just going to go get another one. So I went downstairs, and the last call had already happened. So now I'm like, shit. Okay, I gave Terry Jonathan Rivers' Eagle Rare. I had half of mine left. I guess I'm just going to give it to Jonathan when he comes. So I'm down in the bar, and as I'm walking out, he's upstairs waiting for me. Jonathan Rivers is. I'm like, oh, shit. So I run up there. We sit down. We do the recording. I give him the rest of mine, and he happily takes it, which is cool. Offered to share it. I'm like, no, I already had the first half. You can have the second half. But more on Eagle Rare later. It was a hell of a bourbon weekend, guys. So that essentially, the next morning we did like a send-off on Sunday, and I went over to Dan's house. Yvette and I went over to Dan's house. The rest of the attendees went over to Honda Fest, which was in town. And, I stuck around for the entire week. We transferred from DFW Lakes Conference Center to the Hilton Canopy, which is in uptown Dallas, about 30 minutes away. Now, here's the deal. We had so much stuff, from swag bags to, Yvette was there now with her luggage and her fat backpack because we both work from the hotel. We were going to work from the hotel because that's my day job too. I can't just leave, right? If I don't work, I don't get paid. So I had my backpack with my multimedia computer, my work computer inside. Yvette had hers with God knows what. And so I said, why don't I just mail a box to myself? So I went to FedEx, and it's basically whatever fits in their boxes. I got the big $30 box, and maybe it was a $25 box. $25 box. And I stuffed it with like 25, 26 pounds worth of stuff, shipped it away, and that helped a little bit. But as I was leaving FedEx office, I was just in my mind in another world. I wanted to get back to the hotel because Ramsey and J-Lo and Nico. So Nico and Ramsey remember I had the episode with the River NSX when they pulled from the river? So it was Nico, Ramsey, and Jhae. But that Jhae wasn't here this time. So they were getting ready to leave. J-Lo, which is Jason Lowe. I talked about him earlier. He's one of the best boys in the NSX world. I wanted to make sure I got back to the hotel before they hooked up Nico's car and left. And I was backing out, and I turned the wheel, and I curbed my wheel of the NSX, my front wheel, curb rash. Got to get that fixed. Kind of started off in an interesting weekend for me. So anyway, I say bye to them. I get the car packed, and I'll send a picture. Maybe I'll post it to the Patreon. I had to force the trunk down because the trunks in the new cars, the new NSXs, are a lot smaller than the old NSX, enough to where it really matters when you're trying to travel with more than one person. So Yvette has this. Oh, because I also have this box of liquor. I didn't even talk about that. So Texas makes, Old Forester makes a bourbon called King Ranch. King Ranch is a Texas thing. I have a friend who picked me up in a King Ranch Ford F-150 truck. So it's a Texas thing. And so I bought that from him ahead of time. And then I got a bottle of sake from the Jhae crew, Hideki Kakunuma, and the rest of the guys from Honda Corporate. It's like their customary thing to hook us up, give the president and the vice president of the club a gift, which we gave them a huge gift as well. A special shout out to Auto Cannon. I think I talked about that last week. So I have those, and then Chase at Pride hooked me up with a Fortaleza as well. So I got the tequila, the King Ranch, and I have the sake. So I have it in a box. So Yvette's sitting there with, you guys ever go to Total Wine? You can get those boxes for all the booze. It's one of those things, like a Jose Cuervo box. So she's sitting in the passenger seat. She's got my backpack on the floor. She's got the box of liquor in her lap, and then she has her backpack. And she was able to, fortunately put her seatbelt on. But we thought about maybe even calling an Uber. That's how packed my car was. So it was a 30-minute ride where she had to sit like that. It was pretty funny, but she's done that before, but not quite that bad. In 2018, when we were at NSXPO in San Francisco, I had worked all week and flew to NSXPO, and she had worked all week and flew to NSXPO, and my car was already there. And so we ended up driving the car from San Francisco back here to Gilbert, and it was like a 14-hour drive. We stayed at a hotel, but it was really, basically she was in the car for 14 hours with a backpack on her lap, a backpack in her arms, very uncomfortable, complaining all the time. This time she flew out, and after 3 days she would fly back. So the only time we had to have the car really crazy was when we took it from one hotel to the other. So we ended up staying at the Hilton Canopy in Uptown Dallas. And I picked that because I wanted to go over to the nicer area just in case we wanted to walk around and experience some of the bars at night. And also a place that had a good parking lot or valet. It felt like valet was mandatory. And so, it's an automatic car. So I wasn't afraid to valet the car. Over the next couple of days, we would go out, hang out with my dear friends that I kind of grew up with or matured with, I guess, the 18 to 23-year-old crew of mine. Went to a kind of a cool Korean barbecue place. But there, James, one of my dearest friends, James, he's been on the podcast before. He gave me a bottle of McKenna 10. So now I'm up to 4 bottles of booze. Okay. 4. Manageable, right? Manageable 4 bottles of booze. Wednesday after I dropped off Yvette, I go and hang out with my friend Philip that I haven't seen in almost 40 years. I haven't seen him since I was like 18 or 19, I think. Maybe 20. Whenever I moved away, I'll be safe to say I haven't seen him since 1999, but it may have been more like 95, 96. But he's the one with the King Ranch truck, and it was great, and I posted online that ultimate wealth isn't necessarily money. It's having these great relationships with people and maintaining those for decades. I'm still in loose contact with people I knew in kindergarten. And it's not like I'm not from some small town where that's just the thing. I grew up in the Dallas area. That's not the thing in big cities to be able to keep these relationships through shared experiences. I'll tell you guys a story. So Thursday morning, I get up early like I usually do. And different time zone, right? So I decided to get some coffee. So I look up on the app. I say, okay, there's coffee. It's 750 feet away. So I leave the hotel, walk, and I don't really pay attention to where I'm going. It's like, all right, it's up here to the right, whatever. So when I look up, I go, wait, where's this coffee shop? And I was walking the opposite direction, but Starbucks was right in front of me, like 50 feet. So I ended up going to Starbucks, get my coffee, get these little egg bites, which I get every once in a while. They're kind of stupid, but they work, right? I don't always eat breakfast. And I decided to eat them there at Starbucks. So I'm eating them at Starbucks because I still have like an hour before I have to log into work. So I'm leaving Starbucks. I'm chatting with the boys, all the J's, because at this point, I'm pretty much the only person that's still not home. Everybody else has been home for days, or they're from out of the country, which some of our guests are every year. We have people coming from Australia, the Netherlands, whatnot. They usually go somewhere else before heading home. So, chatting with the boys, and I go to take a picture of this sign. You may have seen me posted on social media about putting meat on your face is good for your skin. Some sort of a skin product thing. And I take the picture, and I go to pick up my my coffee that I set on the ledge, and I turn to walk, and not 5 feet in front of me, walking right at me, is Troy Aikman. So if you know anything about football, you should know who Troy Aikman is. And I looked up, I was like, hey, good morning. But I wasn't, fanboyish. Like, I'm not a diehard Dallas Cowboys fan, but I grew up in the area. I like Troy Aikman. To me, he's a great announcer. He does games every week. He's been doing games for 15, 20 years, basically since he retired. 30 years, hell, I don't know. But it was cool. I look back, and it's just me and Troy on this uptown street. And it looked like he just got out of the gym or something. He goes and he gets into his old G-Wagon, and he drives off. And a part of me was like, oh, man, I should go say something to him. Maybe I should take a selfie real quick. But I don't want to be that guy. I always want to act like I've been there before. But it was mind-blowing to me. So I'm walking back to the hotel, and, special shout out to KD. So KD is one of the valets at Lone Star Valet. And he is, I probably talk to him a little bit every day. He's a great guy. But I was like, hey, man, KD, I just ran into Troy Aikman. He's like, what? I was like, yeah, man. I was over there around the corner. It's really cool. So I go into work and whatnot. That's boring. Work's boring. As I'm leaving to go on with my day, and Katie's like, oh, man, I didn't realize that was Troy Aikman. I've talked to him before, too. I went and had to look him up. I was like, damn, 3-time Super Bowl champion. I'm kind of looking at Katie like, damn. He must be young. Because, I'm 48, so I get it. But you have to, really be into NFL football and watch stuff a lot. But it's crazy. But he said he's talked to him before, which is, man, it's nuts. So I'm guessing that Troy Aikman probably lives somewhere in the area, and he's always around there. My second to my last night there, I decided to go to this corner bar in Uptown. I think it's called Uptown Bar. Now, I walk in there, and it's just me. Well, there's people in the bar, but I'm by myself. And I'm looking to see what I want to order, and I look, and they have an Eagle Rare back there. They didn't have shit else. It's kind of like a college bar with just shit drinks and shit mixers, and that's what they're used to. And I go, okay, well, I'll take that Eagle Rare on the rocks. And I asked the bartender, I was like, hey, so is that like an old person's drink? Like nobody ever orders it? She started laughing. She goes, oh, we don't really sell it that much. I'm like, okay, cool. So she pours it, and I look, and she hands me back my credit card. She's like, hey, do you want me to keep the tab open? I'm like, yeah, sure. I always say yeah at first, right? But I'm looking at it, and this was like a 5-ounce pour of Eagle Rare on the rocks. And I'm like intimidated. I'm like, holy shit, I'm probably going to have this one drink. Because if I have more than this one drink, unfortunately, I'm like right around the corner from the hotel. I have my car with me because I haven't checked it back in because I was kind of out all night. Or not really all night, but I was out and about before this. And this was Halloween night. Yeah, this was Halloween. So back up. So Halloween, I went over to see my good friend Christy and Eric. And Christy is a sister of Dan. So I've known Christy just as long as I know Dan. Christy's recovering from cancer and whatnot. But I went over there and helped them pass out Halloween candy. And they have one of those neighborhoods where they shut the neighborhood down. The police do. And there's thousands of people that walk the neighborhood and get candy. So I kind of helped them hand out candy. And it was great. But I was trying to figure out what was I doing that night where I was out with the car. That's what it was in North Richland Hills. And so I hadn't quite checked fast forward back to the bar. I hadn't quite checked my car in yet. And so I was at the bar, right? And I sit down with this Eagle Rare, and I'm sitting there thinking, Jesus, I should have just cashed out because this is a lot of booze. But then I decided to order these fries. I get these fries. People sitting next to me, they got the food, and I look at it, and I go, man, that's really good looking. I go, can you guys watch my drink real quick? I'm going to go in there and order some food. And they're like, yeah, cool, watch your drink. I go and order the food. Get done. 15, 20 minutes later, and I've killed the Eagle Rare, but I made the executive decision to not order anymore. So walk up to the bar and I cash out. That big ass Eagle Rare, $12.94. You can't go anywhere and get any bourbon. Sometimes they have Wells, right? You go somewhere and it's like, okay, happy hour, you get Wells, and they're $8 Wells or whatnot. That's the exception. But even then, you don't get as much as I got for less than $13. Like, thank God I cashed out, but man, and it's a thing when they go to pour your drink and they don't measure it. And then if they have anything good behind the bar and they don't measure it, you're just like, yeah. But this girl, I don't know. She probably had no clue. She's, I don't know, mid-20s, and she just poured it to all the way to the top, man. And that's my kind of bartender. Sometimes when you go to hotels that aren't fancy, like a Residence Inn or something, and they actually have something you like a Macallan or something in the back, and they don't measure it, that's like the best. When they do measure it, that sucks. But that takes me to my last night there, okay? So I go to Pride, which I do a lot of business with Pride. I make their t-shirts and stuff, and Mark and Chase are really good friends of mine. And my boy James comes and hangs out with us. And at this point, I've already gone to Total Wine a couple times because Chase is a big bourbon guy. So he calls me in the morning and says, hey, that Total Wine by your house, if you get there when they open up, they have a bunch of drops. And I want you to go over there and check to see if they have this special Jack Daniels for me. And so I went over there and they didn't have the Jack Daniels, but he says, you might want to look around and see if there's anything else they have because, it's early in the morning. And so they had a Yamazaki that I've never seen before. Not the Yama 12, but some other Yamazaki. And then they had Hibiki, and the Hibiki was like $80 there or $90. And over here, when you find it, it's $120. And so I bought that. So I bought those two, but I didn't buy what he sent me for. So now I got 2 more bottles of booze. Okay. So then Friday morning, I go there again because he gives me a call and he goes, hey, I don't know if you left the hotel yet, but they have E.H. Taylor single barrel instead of small batch. I go, oh, because I was just talking to him the day before about single barrel. It's harder to find and it tastes better. And I've never found it in the wild. And usually when you do find it, it's secondhand prices. So people want $200 for it, just something ridiculous. But when you don't pay secondhand prices, it's like a $70 bottle or a $60 bottle or whatever. So I go there. I go to Total Wine on Friday morning, and they have 2 bottles left of this E.H. Taylor single barrel. So I buy one of them. I don't want to buy 2. I'm never that guy to clean to clear the shelves. So I buy one of them, and then the employee's like, "Oh, we also got bottles of this, this, and this, and this. Evan Williams, single barrel." And I was like, "Evan Williams single barrel sounds familiar." So I was curious because when you look at an Evan Williams bottle, it's not impressive. I'm like, "Oh, okay, it looks like some generic ass bourbon. I don't want that." But I reached in the box and I pulled it up and I was like, "Oh, the single barrel. Oh, Drew Bunkley, a friend of the show, bought me this when he went on the bourbon trail as a gift." So they used to have it and then they didn't, and you could only get it in Kentucky on the bourbon trail. But then at some point they decided to release it again, but it usually goes really fast when they do release it. So I had to buy it. So now I'm up to even more bottles. Okay. Now I started with 2 bottles. Okay. I had the King Ranch and the Fortaleza. Those are the bottles. And then of course I got the gift of the sake, which made 3. Okay. Now I'm up to like, I think 6 or 7 or 8 bottles at this point. And I'm thinking, thank God I'm driving, right? I'm driving back to Arizona. So that's how I start off my Friday. So then from there I go and I spend the day at Pride. I get the tour of the place, and, Mark and Chase are big booze guys. Ended up getting some side skirts on my car that I didn't really plan on getting, regardless of what Chase says if he ever listens to this. So that's even more money that I spent. But the guys give me a good deal. They have a blemish on them. So we just kind of have this deal. And Mark decides to give me a bottle of Shibui 18. It's like a $300 bottle of a Japanese whiskey, but he has like 30 of them, right? So he's like, "Here, you ever had this?" I go, "No." "Okay, you can have this." I'm like, "What?" So now it's another bottle of booze that I have that I didn't plan on having, but I'm not going to say no. So then while we're there getting ready to go hang out at Boomer Jack's, which is a local chain out there, like a bar and grill, Chase gets these alerts on his phones. He's like, "Hey guys, they have all these different bourbon drops here and there. And if we get there in 15 minutes, we can get this, limit 1 per person." And I'm looking at what they have. And this is stuff that we get it here in Arizona, but unless you get it on one of these bourbon drops where you have to get in your car and race there, limit 1 per person, and usually they're 20 or 30 minutes away, if not further. And usually they're sold out of the good stuff by the time you get there. He's like, "Hey, let's pile into my car," which we jumped into his little daily driver Civic, me, James, and Chase. And we went to this, I forgot what it's called, Goodies or something like that. We walk in and they have Weller 12, Weller SR, Fortaleza Extra Añejo, Russell's Reserve, George C. Stagg. Like they have all this stuff, right? A ton of Eagle Rares. I already have 2 bottles here anyway. Ton of Eagle Rares. And so we all grab one. They grab 2. They did this thing where it's limit 1, right? But the guy was like, I don't care. We've had guys come and change T-shirts and hats, and I haven't stopped them. It's like, oh, really? So then we went out to the car after we checked in, and then, James and Chase were like, I'm going back in and grab another bottle. I'm like, what? Okay, I guess. So they go in there and they both grab a bottle, and the guy doesn't say anything. I go to walk over there, and then the other employee's like bitching at him for letting him kind of go in and do that. So I choose not to do it. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have grabbed the Fortaleza, because that's whatever they have on those things is really hard to get. And if you don't get to these locations within 15, 20 minutes of getting those alerts, theirs are sold out. But Chase deals in booze secondhand market all the time. So he'll buy like 2 or 3 things and he'll have them sold like the next day. I don't do that. So I get it that he wanted to do that. So I got that one more bottle there. Okay. So I bought George C. Stagg. So we get back to the office and Chase is like, okay, well here, I'm going to sell you. I go, well, he said, I pulled a Weller 12 and a Weller SR for you. I'm like, shit. All right. Well, how much do I owe you? So now I end up with 12 bottles of liquor. So I drove back from Dallas with 12 bottles, or 11 liquor and 1 sake in my car. And of course, my wife's like, you're done. But that's jumping ahead of the story a little bit. After that, we go to Roger Lohr's place. Really nice house. He has okay, here's some car talk for you. Honda S2000R. It's an R because it has an upgraded R motor from Honda. Turboed, everything. And that was actually I got to drive it. And that was actually my first time ever driving a Honda S2000. Hell of a time to break in your first time driving a Honda S2000, which is an incredible car by all accounts, all reviews. Great track car, great daily. Some people say it's better than the NSX. The first gen NSX is a daily driver and all around car. I would argue just because of merit and regalness that the NSX is still king, but from a pure drivability and track car and everything else, I can't really argue with people who that's their forte. I don't know. That was really cool to drive that car. Super tight. And, I need a car for 2 or 3 days before I really feel like it's an extension of me. So it wasn't really, it always felt, anytime I drive someone else's car, it doesn't feel like my car. And once it feels like your car, that's when you're most comfortable in it. But it was still awesome to get to drive it. And we hung out there and he has all sorts of like nice liquor. And he goes, whatever you guys want. And so I found that's the first time I was able to drink a Louis 13. I've always wanted Louis 13, but I could never justify buying a 1 ounce pour in any restaurant or bar that has it, because it's always minimum $250, sometimes $350 for a pour. I just can't do that for an ounce of booze. And then if you want to buy a bottle, they're anywhere from $4,500 and up. Sometimes they're $7,000. I don't know why some are more than others, but I know that if it's $4,500, that's about $4,300 more than I'm willing to pay for a bottle of booze. But he had it and it was open. So I drank some of that. I drank some Hibiki 18, which I've never had before, I don't think. We had Redbreast 27. We had a bunch of stuff. Some of it I've had before. Some of it I haven't had before. But we drank a lot. But I like the way they do it, because what they do is just put a little bit in the glass, like half an ounce pour, and you just drink that. And then if you want to try something else, you try something else. And so if you're sitting there somewhere for 2, 3, 4 hours partying and just talking and having fun, then you really don't consume as much liquor as you would think if you're just not really paying attention and taking shots every 5 seconds and whatnot. So there's 2 different style of party drinkers. There's the people who say shot, shot, shot every 5 seconds. And I've been to those parties and they will blow through a bottle of we'll say tequila, Don Julio 1942. They'll pour that out in shots and that bottle will be gone in 5 minutes just from people shooting it. But this group is people like to taste it, sip on it, really enjoy what you're drinking, which I prefer that pace more than the shot, shot, shot pace. And then Mark from Pride catered in. He's got a buddy that owns a sushi restaurant. So they brought in a bunch of sushi, kind of hibachi stuff, and this freshly sliced, just delicious salmon. And I think oko or ono, whatever that white fish is, or white colored fish is from Hawaii. We had that. And that was my last night in DFW. My bestie Garfield came out. It ended up being his birthday. So him and James were from my original crew. They were both there. Threw the keys to Garfield, let him drive my car. Didn't know if I'd get the car back or not. I just hoped I would. He was gone for about 30 minutes. So I wasn't nervous about it, but I would do that over and over anytime. That's my ride or die. I list him on social media as my 1A, and Tony would be my 1B. And then James was like, well, what am I? I go, hey, you're on the Mount Rushmore. Okay. You're on the Mount Rushmore of my friends. But that was an excellent time, man. And, those are going back full circle, those are the relationships that you really value the most, or relationships like that you can hang out, because I've known Terry and Mark and those guys loosely in my NSX life, and they're the greatest of guys. And then you combine that with James and Tony and Garfield and Doug. And I didn't mention Doug earlier, but Doug was our boy. Still is. He was the first night we went to the Korean barbecue place. And you combine all that together, and I just feel so lucky, including the friends that I have here and people like Wes. I just feel so lucky to have those people in my life where nothing else has to go right. Sometimes everything can go wrong, but at the end of the day, I always got those people in my life. Dwayne up in Michigan, he's a Mount Rushmore. He's the Mount Rushmore. But I just feel so fortunate to have those guys in my life. But the next morning I pack up and I'm driving back here, which was yesterday. It's a long drive. And I'm going through construction in Odessa, Texas. Remember I talked about the streeter and the streeter earlier in this, like way earlier in this, how Carrie Streeter saved my ass by giving me medicine, because she gave me some pills that I could take, was it Flexerol? Flexerol, which you can't get over the counter. And then the lidocaine patch on the way there. So I'm driving back. My back was in and out the entire time I was gone, but it was never worse than it was those first few days. But it was in and out the whole time. I'm driving back. I'm going through construction zone. I put the NSX in not neutral. I put it in manual mode, to where you have to use the paddles. And as construction clears up, I just floor it and I forget that I'm in manual mode, and the pressure builds up and I hear a pop. And what happened was the intercooler hose, because the intercooler hoses get really soft. They're kind of a failure point on the new NSXs if you have a modified NSX. It popped off, and I knew as soon as it happened what that was. And I think I actually saved my engine by that popping off and releasing all the pressure. So maybe a blessing in disguise. But as a consequence, the car goes into limp mode. And so all the lights keep flashing, all the warning signs it goes through, all these different warning signs, and it's basically useless. And so I had pulled over at a truck stop, which happened to be weirdly the same truck stop we were at a week and a half ago, coming from Odessa after we spent the night in Odessa to head to DFW. Called Matt Streeter and said, hey man, you're my closest friend. According to this thing, I could be at your house in 8 hours. So yeah, I drove the NSX in limp mode. And at the time this happened, the car wouldn't go over 60 mile an hour. Right? So I'm going like 55, 60. And at some point it warms up and I'm able to go 65, 70 or 68 mile an hour through West Texas. Now, the speed limit in West Texas is 80. It started to rain a little bit. So imagine this NSX driving slow as shit while everybody's flying by. Because if the speed limit's 80, where are people going? 90, 95. I saw a few state troopers. I probably saw the same state troopers multiple times, and they're probably disappointed every time because I look like a good catch, except for not only was I driving slow, I was driving 10 mile an hour under the speed limit. If anything, I get pulled over for going slow. But that made the drive a very long drive yesterday. Very long drive. I finally get to Matt Streeter's house. Well, first off, as I got into Arizona, and thank God we had the 2-hour time difference, although we're back to 1 now as of this recording. But as I get back into Arizona, I've been cruising now. Somehow I got it to go at 70, 74 for the past hour. So I'm feeling pretty good because the speed limit went from 80 to 75 sometimes 80, but most of the time it was 75 or 70 or 65. So now when you're going 74 and a 65 or 74 and a 75, it feels like you're kind of going more the pace of traffic. The car was holding steady, and I knew it wouldn't go any faster because if you try to give it too much gas, it goes into this, the engine retards is what it's called, and it cuts off and it has a kind of get its own traction. It's a major pain in the ass. As I get about 20 miles outside of the streeter's house, the car, I get caught in like this weird little traffic situation, and then the car makes like this, I don't know, I say it coughing up. The car's like, and then I get the smell. So I think I sucked something in the pipe because there's no hose there, and the car started like kind of kicking and kind of slowing down to like 30 and 35 and just started, I thought the car was going to die on me in the middle of the highway. And at this time it was 8:30 at night, and I got these big semis all up on my ass and everybody's kind of going around me. So then I kind of pull over and I'm driving up the shoulder looking for the next exit. So then I exit. The exit's no good. So I get back on the highway. The car's still kind of sputtering a little bit. And now I'm freaking out because I thought I'd passed Matt's exit because I already told him, don't worry about it. I'm just going to go home. So I pull over to the gas station and I'm filling up with gas. And I said, hey, Matt, I gave him a call and he goes, well, do you want me to get the trailer and come get you? Or do you want to try to make it to the house? So it was a toss-up, right? Ultimately decided to try to make it to the house. I go, well, let me fill up with gas. Let me get back on the highway. And let me see how the car reacts. Let me see if it feels like it's going to hold up. Because I smelt some shit, right? So, it's a very expensive car. And the motor is $90,000 if it blows. So all this stuff is going in my head. And get back on the highway. And I'm able to get to go 55 mile an hour. Cruise control. So I'm like, hey man, I'll be there in 15 minutes. Get to his house, pull up in his driveway, we take the wheel off, fix the hose, because I know exactly what happened. The pressure builds up and the radiator hose popped off, the intercooler hose pops off because of the pressure, and that's it. It basically disables your car or slows it like way down. So we're able to take that off and put that hose back on, reclamp it. And all the dash lights were still going off all the way on my way home because I didn't reset the ECU. But I was able to get home, drive normal speed, 75, 80, 85 mile an hour without fail, and finally got home. And so the tale of two streeters. Carrie Streeter, by way of Matt, saved my ass on the way there. Matt Streeter saved my ass on the way back. That's crazy. One weird observation that I had is there was a lot of Cybertrucks. I wouldn't say 50 of them, but I probably saw a dozen Cybertrucks on the way between here and Dallas on the open freeway. So that's pretty impressive. You start to see more and more of them out there. Closer, I think, to the big cities, but the fact that they were still on the main highway for something that I don't know what kind of range it has, but I doubt they were driving from Arizona to Dallas. But they could have been El Paso or New Mexico that I drove through. And that essentially was my trip. And I'm tired. It's funny, earlier I was looking, I go, God, man, it feels like it's 11:30 and it was like 7:30. And I think what happened was just everything finally caught up with me. But I knew I had to record this podcast. This is actually longer than I thought. Rarely do you guys get to hear me ramble. Shout out if you're still listening to this. But now that I'm back in town, I can fix the Infiniti. But I don't think I'm going to have time because next weekend is Marcelo's baby shower. He's having his first kid pretty soon, him and his girlfriend. And then it's going to be Thanksgiving. So the following weekend is one less with United Food Bank. Gosh, I got to start promoting that. That's 2 weeks away. Holy crap. Yeah, so it'll be a while. So that being said, I want to thank Right Honda and Right Toyota, Toyota of Huntington Beach, Claremont Toyota, and Gardenia Honda, 4online.com, Sell Shop Wireless Services, AutoCanada officially licensed Honda and Acura Gear, Patreon Business Supporter, Automotive Specialty Tool of Owings Mills, Maryland, Kui Automotive out of Winter Garden, Florida, Pell Construction out of Caledonia, Michigan, B House Small Home Design out of Ashburn, Virginia, and Traverse City, Michigan, Shaping Success with West Tankersley out of Boise, Idaho. If you're in a position to help the podcast upgrade, you can join the Patreon for a little $3 a month to get access to bonus audio as well as show swag. Special shout out to Mark Stillman, Catherine Carr, Teddy Ramos, Richard Graves, Byron Jones, Bo Jung, Oscar Mina, Drew Bunkley, and Yasu Chiba. When you email the show, hardparkingpodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram at Jhae Pfenning. Join the Hard Parking Relations Facebook group. Follow me on TikTok at hardparkingjay. Join the Hard Parking channel on Instagram Remember that I can't grow like telling the world how great this show is. Let's do this. Let's grow this thing together. And I will talk to you all next week.
Shut up!